Hotel managers often ignore some simple expense budget secrets that they can leverage in the hotel operation. Do you want to skyrocket your profit performance? You may be surprised by where that secret lies in boosting profitability. However, are you by mistake ignoring this KPI? And do you know how it is impacting your bottom line? Unlock expense budget secrets with the simple categorization of fixed and variable expenses. I would urge you to watch all the way to the end of this video. And why is that? Well, I have a surprise reveal for you that will skyrocket your profit performance. And that lies in the fixed and variable expenses. Let's jump right into it. This webinar touches upon an important element of expenses and their use in analyzing a profit and loss statement. What you will learn in this webinar will be the more common appearance in a profit and loss statement is total cost. Unit cost is used less than total cost, although its importance and power in analysis is by no means lower. So let us begin with total cost. Pause the webinar on this slide. Assume that the costs listed here belong to the rooms department. Mark against each of them whether it is a total cost. We will come back to this slide. Broadly, expenses can be categorized by those that do not move with business volume, fixed expenses, and those that do, variable expenses. Further, some variable expenses move in exact proportion to increase in occupancy. Let us look at an example of fixed expenses. We begin with one of the biggest items of expense in a profit and loss statement in any department of a hotel, labor cost. Labor cost is considered fixed because the headcount related that is considered permanent. Normally, there is a small portion of labor cost which is variable relating to temporary labor. On the other hand, an example of variable expenses is supplies and others. This is one of the biggest variable expenses found particularly in the rooms department. Supplies tend to move with occupancy directly. This is why a periodical analysis of this expense can show how items are consumed in relation to occupancy. So let us return to our total cost slide earlier. Pause the webinar on this slide. Now we have assigned cost behaviors to these expenses listed here belonging to the rooms department. Some are fixed while others are variable. However, the key concept to remember is that total costs can be fixed or variable. Let us look at unit costs, which are probably not as common as total costs. Unit costs are variable costs which have been related to the business volume. Every item of expense cannot be treated as a unit cost. So, how can a unit cost be determined? There are two requirements which must be fulfilled in order for any expense to be treated as a unit cost. Let us go back to our list of expenses from the previous slides. We had assigned cost behaviors to these expenses listed here belonging to the rooms department earlier. Now, according to the two requirements in the previous slide, fixed expenses cannot be considered, so only variable expenses will apply. So labor costs, linen and uniform costs are out of the picture, being fixed costs. The second requirement for an item of variable expenses to be treated as a unit cost is that an inventory must be held for these items. Here again, laundry and dry cleaning does not have any inventory item related to it, although it is a variable expense. So that is cancelled too. That leaves us with expense items 4, 5, and 6, all of which are variable expenses and for which the hotel holds inventories. So these expenses qualify to be unit costs. However, in their current form, they are not yet unit costs. There is one more step that needs to be taken which will convert these variable expenses into unit costs. Let us see that now. Variable expenses are total costs until they are expressed in terms of business volume. Then they become unit costs. The key concept to remember is how total costs can be treated as unit costs after satisfying the two requirements discussed earlier. Having said that business volume must be related to variable expenses to make them unit costs, it is logical to look at two of the most used examples of business volume, one in the rooms department and the other in the food and beverage department. So, what does cost per occupied room and cost per cover measure? Since cost per occupied room and cost per cover are related to variable expenses and variable expenses change with business volume, these unit costs show what is the spending for every unit of that particular cost. For example, in the case of the cleaning supplies in rooms, for every room occupied during a month, how much was spent on supplies to clean? Similarly, say for supplies in food and beverage, how much was spent on each cover served during a month? This link to your operation slide is another which will pop up in every webinar. Check back with your own hotel operation and your monthly profit and loss statement for total costs and unit costs. So, what are unit costs useful for? Since they are principally related to variable expenses which have inventories held for them, they are good ways to control these variable expenses with corresponding business volume, occupancy, or covers. They can thus be used for budgeting and forecasting purposes and good sources of estimation of variable costs. Let us do a quick review. We learned what total costs were and what unit costs were. We also learned that unit costs are related closely to business volume and that they are useful in controlling variable costs, budgeting, and forecasting. You should apply this knowledge in your own hotel operation now. If you want to know how to earn higher room revenue, click on the video above on room revenue.